All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Heather Alderman. I'm the Executive Director of COSMA, and I appreciate everybody coming in and joining us today. We are going to talk about how you might turn your abstract or your presentation into a publication. So I am joined today by individuals who have been heavily involved in COSMA since its inception, both serving on the Board of Commissioners, which makes the accreditation decisions, and the Board of Directors, which manages COSMA's operations and policy. So in other words, they really understand the role that accreditation can play in a sport management program, and they also understand the variety of demands that are on you, faculty, to publish. So obviously these two things are related and complementary, and we will talk a little bit more about that. And so that's what we're going to discuss. So I'd like to welcome the three presenters, and I'll have them each give you a little bit of a hello. So I'll do that one by one. So Dr. Kane, Jennifer Kane from University of North Florida.
Hello. Thank you all for coming today. We're excited that you're here. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about my contacts. I am at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville, and I am currently serving as the interim dean for the College of Education and Human Services, but have been over the past kind of served in all of the various different roles. I'm assistant professor, associate professor, department chair, associate dean, and now interim dean. So have had kind of a lot of different perspectives around the topic that we're talking about today. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Next is Dr. Darlene Kluka. She is a research associate and a consultant from the University of Pretoria and has much history. So Dr. Kluka.
It's only because I'm older. Thank you very much. I really appreciate being part of this. I've had the opportunity to watch Jennifer genuinely grow as I also grew in COSMA, and all of the things that she said, I've had an opportunity to be mostly at Barry University near the Miami area. So since Jen is over at in Jacksonville, the people in the same state kind of have a tendency to pay attention more to what's going on with one another. And I'm very proud of her that she's done such a great job with the programs, but particularly a great job with her career. So
I did not pay her to
Jen.
say that. That is very, very nice of you. Thank you.
Well, it's easy to tell the truth. Easy to tell the truth. Michael has been around quite a bit, and I have followed his career as well. And he has some really good insight as to how to be successful in moving up the ladder in terms of tenure, promotion, etc., involving research and publications as well. And so I'm very proud and pleased to be with them. And then Heather and I just collaborated a little bit on a thing that's going to be in an international encyclopedia of business management or something like that on what was it, accreditation, huh? And so that particular one you might look for because it's going to be in a business encyclopedia rather than in something involving sport. So I'm very pleased and proud of watching Heather grow in her position as I'm one of the ones that kind of started with you when you very first began. There were a few of us who were dedicated enough or crazy enough to stay with the group. At any rate, there you go.
Thank you, Darlene. Michael, Dr. Fall from Owens Community College.
You can always use Michael. I've been Michael longer than anything else. And thank you, Darlene, for those kind words. I can't always end up following someone who's much nicer than I am. But I'm happy to have all of you joining us today, and always happy to do things for COSMA and for Heather in particular. In terms of some little bit of background, I've had a wide variety career. You can look that up on LinkedIn if you want. And I'm going to drop my email in the chat later. If you ever need anything, just drop a note. But just to let y'all know that in preparation for this, I went back in time a little bit and was thinking about the pre-tenure and immediate post-tenure time I had when I was at Ohio U many years ago, and how those things shaped the way I approached all research, and not just from research as a thing, but research as a process, research as a thing that drives me nuts and keeps me awake at night. And so hopefully that we've been able to take some good pieces of information. I've been able to take some of my past and stick it into this presentation today that will benefit you all and hopefully make things easier, simpler, more straightforward for everybody. And in the end, just get you wherever it is you're looking to go.
Thanks, Michael. All right, let's get started here. Just going to introduce things a little bit. There are many ways to go from point A, submitting an abstract to present at a conference, to point B, which is writing a publishable paper. And why not keep that second point in mind when submitting abstracts to conferences? Why not get as much out of that presentation, preparation, and research that you do and get a publication out of it? So our panelists, as you can hear, will talk about why conducting research about sport management might be useful and helpful to you. And they will also talk about various strategies, tactics, and methods that they have used or would recommend that you use to turn that research into a publication-ready article. So accreditation is a research pathway. Yes, it is. Not only do individuals want to understand the impact of the accreditation process, but also to understand what, if any, difference lie between the faculty, the students, the program content, et cetera, in an accredited program versus a not accredited program. So COSMA as an organization has several broad-based goals, and I'm going to just be reading them to you. They're not listed here, but we have a purpose that allows us to present this kind of information to you. We want to promote continuous improvement in sport management education through the use of outcomes assessment and other quality assurance processes to therefore benefit our members, higher education, and the public. A second goal, and there are many goals, not just these three, we want to assist programs in benchmarking through the sharing of best practices and providing research and information, like this presentation. And we also want to be a resource to member institutions and the public concerning issues in sport management, education, and accreditation. So as such, it really behooves COSMA to facilitate various types of research and to create forums in which to do so, like our annual conference and our new journal. Speaking of journals, where is the list of all the journals? Well, guess what? It's on the NASM website. So I found it and I was very excited. I copied just some of the more general or comprehensive journals here, but if you go to the NASM website, there is a list and it's sorted by category. So I think that's extremely helpful. You can know that there are many outlets for you to actually submit your work. And I think we get maybe caught up in a few that we think are the only ones that we could submit to, but there really are quite a few. So I wanted to put this list out here.
Heather, can I add something to that? Because I just learned this when I was looking at the presentation. So when you hit the comprehensive list, if anyone is at, one of the things I'm going to talk about is like the Carnegie classification of your institution and the expectations of for research at your institution. And UNF is kind of in this wonderful place of shifting from potentially like from an R2 to an R1, and it's a really difficult transition with a lot of infrastructure that's in place. But what's interesting about that list, it does have some journal information about the quality, the readership, whether it's what the ranking is of that journal, which can be very, very important for individuals who are interested in or have to report that type of information in annual reviews or in promotion and tenure folios. So I just learned that, Heather. It was very helpful for us. So
great. Yeah.
Use that. Yeah.
It was new to me too. And if anybody, on this presentation, you can click on the link there and it actually works.
Yeah.
And I'm
Very
just not, I have too many things going on and I can't do it right now, but, but I can give you the link, or you can have these slides and then you'll have that, or you can just Google it right now. Yeah, thanks, Jen. I'm really glad that it's helpful, and I agree. So I'm showing you, I'm going to be launching a poll, and I'm showing you the questions, but you will actually answer them right now, please. It's just a few questions. There's only one that has words that you might want to write down. So if you could please do this, we just want to get some feedback from you so that you can, so that the presenters can speak more directly to what your needs are specifically. All right, so we got 3 responses. I'm not going to necessarily look for everybody, but hopefully we'll get quite a few. All right, right now we have 70%, 71%. Oop, it's changing rapidly. Ah, interesting. Okay, we have a little bit of a balance. I was going to say, so we have about 45% of the individuals on this call. Now it's 50. Okay, so that have less than 5 years. They're less than 5 years away from the terminal degree that they earned. That doesn't mean that they're, you know, necessarily the youngest, but that's they're closest to that degree. And then just a few are maybe 5 to 8 years out, and then the rest, 33%, are more than 8 years out of their out of that. So please continue to respond. Most of you have responded. I think just the presenters have not. So I'm going to end the poll, I think. Well, I'll keep it open. And then how many publications are you required to produce? Actually, close to 30%, not 29% don't have to produce anything. Only about 57% have to produce 1 to 2 publications, and then 14% are having to do 3 or more per year. So just so you all know on the panel. And then what types of publications are you most interested in discussing? We have, individuals could respond to as many of those of the options as they wanted. So let's see, the lowest is other. So I'm not sure exactly what that is. And I guess we'll just have you put that in the chat, or you can say that out loud. But quantitative research is the highest at 50%, then qualitative research at 43%. So I'm not sure the percentages necessarily matter that much. A third of people are interested in mixed methods. 43% are interested in pedagogical types of publications, case studies at 43%. So it definitely covers a number of different areas. And then, let's see, I will end the poll, and you can see this yourself, the results. I'm not sure how I will get access to what you wrote in the long answers. All right, is everybody seeing this? Something that's tough is finding other collaborators, what the steps are to publishing, the strategies, as this is like exactly what we're talking about, to take that presentation put it into a manuscript, and then finding that right journal. And I'm not sure what this means. Common factors that reviewer, oh yeah, like what is a reviewer looking for? How do you maximize what you're writing to actually be published? So, all right, I hope that's enough time there for everybody to have seen everything. And are you back? Are we back at the presentation? Okay, all right. So, sorry, there we go. All right, I think Jen, you're next.
All right. So it was good to hear from you where you are in your career and what you're looking for. I'm gonna talk through each one of these, the little circles that are going around the visual, and I'm probably gonna mix in hopefully hit some of the things you're looking for, and also kind of switch between kind of a perspective from a faculty member, but then also kind of an administrative perspective, because some of the things that I want to share with you are things that you could potentially propose to your department chair or college dean for support for turning your abstract into a publication, and just research in general. So I will kind of switch between those two perspectives, and feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat. Happy to answer those. So first, I want to start by saying that, in my opinion, every single presentation, for the most part, if you're interested in publications, is you should start with the end in mind, right? So you should always start by thinking, I'm going to do a presentation, this is going to be a presentation, but my end goal is to publish this. So you start with the things that you need to do in order to publish it, and then you turn the publication into a presentation. So kind of think backwards with that, right? So do the research, think of it as a get the journal publication, and then present your research at the presentation. So it's just kind of thinking backwards of that, because I know, and I look at a lot of Vitas, and in my own Vita, if you look at it, I have, 3 pages of presentations and maybe a page and a half of publications. That shows I wasn't thinking that way, right? So we often do a lot of presentations, but not all of them turn into publications. So how do we get motivated to kind of flip that outcome? So first, talk through, like, what are your methodology strengths? And I heard some people kind of in the poll want to think about, quantitative versus qualitative, mixed methods. And you have to think about what your strengths are. If you are not a quantitative methodology, and you don't have you don't have the confidence to do quantitative research, then you probably want to think about what that looks like for qualitative research. But also use resources on your campus. If you have a stats department, if you have an office of faculty enhancement or professional development, are there resources at your institution that are available to help you with doing quantitative stats? Do you have a doc program in your department or in your college that potentially you have faculty who are willing to help you with methodology? So look for resources, look for people to who are good collaborators that you could potentially bring on board in writing your research. Second, a lot of us are doing great things, but are you studying it? Okay, so think about how to kind of turn what you're already doing into a research presentation. What are the outcomes? Are you interested in knowing the outcomes of what you're doing? So can you study, especially if you're doing something for accreditation? If you're looking at learning outcomes, turn the learning outcome into a research question and collect data on that and find out what the outcomes are. Is that, are your students actually doing that? Those kind of things can be turned into research. If you're doing anything around diversity, if you're looking at, any of the assessment categories, any of the COSMA goals can often be turned into research questions that you can turn into research. Are there internal and external resources available? I just want to share a couple of things with you. When I was associate dean, we were looking at ways to incentivize faculty to turn their abstracts into publications, and we offered faculty a $1,000 stipend to do that. If they came to us, they had a proposal to turn their presentation into a publication, and they actually did it, and they showed us that their paper was accepted into a journal, they got a $1,000 stipend for that. Not everybody can do that, I understand, but you never know if you don't ask. Okay, so if you have a research council, or you have committees in your college or your department where you can bring ideas to your chair or to your dean, that's something that you might think about. We also have what's called the FERN program, where we give a stipend to a faculty member and then also an external mentor, somebody who's already published, who has a track record of publication, and who's willing to mentor our faculty member in that process of research and publication. Both the mentor and the mentee both get $1,000 stipend for that collaboration. And again, I know everybody doesn't have the resources to do that, but that can be done without resources, right? That can be done with utilizing your network, utilizing your other faculty members, your chair, your dean, utilizing their networks to just set up those relationships to make that happen. Think about, how does this fit if it's a presentation or if it's an idea that you have. I just highly recommend that you sit down and spend some time planning out what your scholarly agenda is going to look like, so it's not all over the place, right? So be strategic about what it is that you want to know, what area do you want to research, how you want to kind of establish yourself as an expert in what area, and put together a plan. As you know, goals are really, really important. Setting goals, making sure that you're tracking your goals, very important in this business. And then again, look at gaps in the literature. When you read journal articles, always look at recommendations for further study. That's a great place to get research ideas. You know, if there's a topic that you're interested in, read that section. There's always great ideas on how you establish the next study that will complement the one that you just read. Look at the limitations. How do you overcome certain limitations? Maybe you replicate the study and eliminate that limitation to get better results. So there's ways to kind of think about how you read the literature, not just to learn something new, but also to learn how you can contribute to that body of knowledge and body of research. So those are just 5 things that I came up with. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
All right, next.
I was waiting a second to see if anybody wanted to pop a question in or not, so.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything in the chat yet, but I'm ready when it's there.
Okay, no worries at all. Following that excellent set of advice, when you're thinking about thinking and you start saying, okay, I'm going to be doing this research and here's a presentation, I might try to target at NASA or COSMA or wherever it might be. You're also looking at the process beyond, which journals am I going to? So what essentially you're doing is you're making choice after choice, and each choice inflects into something else. And I wanted to put some of this into today's discussion because this is sometimes it's the glue, sometimes it's the grit in the mixture that makes things difficult for someone to be able to complete the things Jennifer was talking about, of getting it from idea to presentation to manuscript. So there's just a few of them here. The first are the institutional expectations. It's really important for you to know where you're at and what people expect from you. I put a smattering of graphics there for the different kinds of journals that you can go for, because Heather shared that list, and there's a lot in sport management there. And I think we've all up on the panel published in several of those. But I've also published in non-sport management journals. I published in business journals because my promotion and tenure pieces, actually, I had 2 different ones because we moved in from one college to another. But you just make your choices based upon what is expected and what you can do. And if for those of you who may have the flexibility of beyond just a journal, don't forget that there's other outlets that you can put in terms of industry trade publications and other kinds of places you can put various levels of research into as well. And sometimes that does count according to your institutional expectations. So that's just one piece of the puzzle. And that will tie back into these other 2 pieces, because the intended audience should really be the driver. Who do you want to have your message in their hands to do something positive with it, to act upon it? We don't want to write books that only 9 people in the world are going to read. We don't want to write articles that people are just going to take to do some drive-by citations when they're doing their own articles. I happen to study sports in the natural environment, not exactly the mainstream of sport world study, which meant that my audience needed to be both conceptual and actionable. So in the conceptual pieces, we put them into journals that had that. In actionable places, we put them into journals who had that. And my range is from JSM to very small online free access journals. And that was fine for my institutional expectations, and it was fine for my personal expectations, because one time at a conference, I was talking to somebody, it was about sports and the environment, and she pulled out a book and started talking about how great this was. And it was my When Harry Met Sally moment, because she was talking about my book, and she didn't realize the title on the book with my name had my tag on it until way later. But it was one of those moments where I never had someone talk about me back to me before, at least not in polite terms. So the idea was I had the audiences, the horses for the courses that we were going to run is where I wanted to put my research. And I think that is a thread you can weave back into all the comments that Jennifer made in terms of setting up your mind, setting up your agenda, things like that. And then the third one there, this is my big one here, the big hit is to collaborate or not. I am not good by myself. I have a lot of ideas. I don't have a lot of talent to conduct those ideas into action. So what I tried to do was to fill the gaps that I had in a skill, because I'm a qualitative researcher by trade and interest. So to borrow a phrase from Harry Potter, the dark arts of the quantitative area, I needed some help. So I mentioned this to somebody, and he introduced me at NASM 2010 to a good friend of mine and my first research collaborator. And frankly, it was basically the beginning of the Beatles. I met my John Lennon or Paul McCartney, depending on who he wants to be. And we hit it off and we started writing. And then we went to another conference and somebody came up to us asking about our projects and this and that. And so we hit it off with her. And so she joined the band, and then she brought somebody else with her. So now the Beatles were formed. But if anybody knows the history of the Beatles, they were about to break up if it wasn't for Billy Preston coming into the session and putting out the White Album. So Billy Preston comes in, we have session players come in and out. We do massive journal articles where all of us are on it, and we do individual solo projects, and we also do collaborations in other ways. So it's this multi-leveled experience that allows us to collaborate in ways that make sense, and also in ways that lift everybody up at the same time. All of us, well, the one person was in Australia, so there was no tenure there for that person, but all of us got tenure along the way because we carried each other. And we were able to help younger people get their foot in the door because they didn't have to carry a big burden since we were already established with our research thread. So think about that collaboration and how you may want to talk to your friends, talk to fellow people you meet at conferences. In fact, I have some friends in the communication area who do writing retreats. Once a year, they gather at somebody's house and they're all writing just to write, but they barbecue, they chit chat, they read each other's work, and they've done it every year. I don't want to say how long because I'm kind of tired of dating myself today with all kinds of comments I'm making. But if you've got that kind of ability, go ahead and work with them because they've been doing it for years and years and years. And so these are the kind of in-between decision points that somebody has to go through when building out your agenda or building out this plan for how you're going to do things. I also wanted to touch a little bit on, because somebody said they want to know how to find those other collaborators. The real thing is put it out there that you're willing to work with people. A lot of times in academics, people think the lone genius just keeps working along. Talk to people about it. Conferences are great. I was really happy when I was already through my PhD program to work with graduate students. Heck, I even had a book chapter published with an undergrad student. I was open to working with anybody because, again, I have a lot of gaps in my skill set and I needed people who can do those kind of things that I could not. And that was a very strong piece towards building up the band. Now, I don't know if you'll create the Beatles like I did, or you might just create, Heather, this one's for you, the Captain and Tennille.
Oh, is it?
But
Yeah.
either way, you're putting on that fit for you, and then you watch yourselves flourish with all of that. So I think those are the key pieces in my part here. because they tie directly to what Jennifer said, but they're also individual decisions that you'll have to make on your own, and then work your way through them and refine them over the course of time in the course of your career.
Thanks, Michael. Does anyone have any comments or questions? I'm moving on to the next slide, but please do put those in the chat if you have them. Whose slide is this? Is it Darlene?
Mine.
Okay.
That's mine.
Okay.
To hopefully dovetail a little bit on what Jennifer's had to say and Michael has had to say, Michael was kind enough to include this with Heather's blessing to talk a little bit about a new journal that's on its way now called the COSMA Journal. And so this is an example of a slide that has some of the broad-based goals when you look to see what journal you're going to select to see if it works for you or not. And I would really recommend that all of you get a copy of these slides so that we don't have to go through every single one, because there's a lot of information here. But let me talk to you a little bit about how you go about selecting these types of things as well. And I have to say, Jen, I really will send you a bottle of Excedrin, because when you're taking some university from the general the general journal concept to a high impact factor journal concept, this is a real challenge, not so much for you younger ones, but for the older ones. They've come through and have had many experiences and do great jobs on the practical level or on the general journal level. But with high impact factor, the game really changes. And so let me give you some examples of what makes a difference between that high impact factor and a general journal. First, obviously, an impact factor really means that somebody out there is measuring the average number of citations received by articles that are published in a journal over a specific period of time. They're considered prestigious. Okay, so already now, again, you have another aspect built in for the younger ones that says there is a pecking order. There is a pecking order. So this idea of everybody shares the wealth, etc., may or may not be the case for whatever kind of a career you're in at that time. And they're often associated with established academic societies or publishers. Now, the good news for COSMA is that since it now has its own journal, it will be able to carry, in a sense, more weight than a journal that's just coming from an individual person who thinks that was a good idea to start a journal. Also, the peer review process. The high impact factor journals have rigorous peer review processes. And just from my own experience, I thought one time I thought I did a pretty good job with a thing that was not, it was going to be in a high impact journal, but it was very much pedagogy, etc. I had to redo that 6 times compared to some of the other things that I did before, because so many people thought they had a different perspective on whatever the real situation was. Ultimately, it was worth it, but it was not an easy task. Manuscripts get reviewed by experts before acceptance for publication. And by the way, I just want to make sure manuscripts are what happens to you before it's published. Articles happen once they're published. So for those of you who are younger, please make sure that you make that distinction, because when you put things on your CV, if you say articles, and then it's not even, and it's in the manuscript phase, people may look at that a little strangely and give you an interview, and all of a sudden you're caught between a rock and a hard place. General journals may also have peer review processes, but they have different criteria for acceptance. That's why it's important for you to look to see what the goals of the journals are, as well as what it's going to look like for the peer review process. And these general journals are also called non-tiered journals, and sometimes they have a more rapid review process that expedites publication. So as an example, let's say you have to put out 3 articles in 1 year, and 2 of them are taking, or 1 of them is taking a long time because it's a little more rigorous than another. So you quickly try to do something and put it in for publication for that 3rd one. And there's nothing wrong with that. It simply means that you're going to go ahead and meet your obligations, if you will, and then you save the other one for the next year or something like that. Publication criteria. The high impact journals have strict criteria for publication, and it includes things like originality, significance, methodological rigor, and contribution to the field. This is sort of hard to do in sport management, my opinion, since I have some experience on the other side with more quasi-experimental kinds of things. The groundbreaking research that advances knowledge in sport management is key. I don't know about you, but I haven't read a whole lot of groundbreaking research other than looking at AI and those types of things as to how it's going to be. So if you think you're going to move the mountain, don't worry about that. Move the little hill. It's okay. General journals have a little bit more flexible publication criteria, and they may accept a broader range of topics. Let me give you an example, and Michael referred to this. There are, it seems to me, this is Kluka's opinion, that there are a lot of manuscripts / articles that are being published in sport management journals that really have to do with coach education or with sociology of sport. I love them both. I think they're tremendously valuable, but that is really not sport management, neither of them. The management of sport, okay? And so that sets us up for cross-cultural kinds of situations, and that doesn't make it bad, but it means that, as Michael said, maybe you don't get whatever you're having published in the COSMA journal or something, but perhaps you have to go somewhere else that's outside the field to do that. Another one has to do with access and open access. The high impact journals can be behind paywalls, and that requires either a subscription or a payment to access individual articles. I have to tell you, those things are getting pretty expensive. Just this morning, I was looking for something and they wanted $75 for 1 article. I said, you can keep it. Thank you. Can't be that good. The high impact journals offer open access options, allowing free access to articles. So investigate that as well. As you know, if you're lucky enough to be at a place like Jen's is at, or like I'm at this moment virtually, they will pay. They will pay for you to be published. But in general, if you were at Barry, where I was before, we hardly had any money at all to do anything with. So that makes a difference, especially if you're younger.
Hey, Darlene, can I add something?
Yes, ma'am.
It came to me, again, we'll show our kind of collective age here, but back probably, I don't know, I would say even just 5 years ago or so, if you had to pay to publish your article, it was a predatory journal. There was a lot of suspicion around having to pay to have your article published. And so times have changed. And so now that is not necessary. Now that is still true. There are predatory journals that you have to be really careful about. Something we haven't really talked about too much here. Maybe Darlene's going to get to it, but paying to have an article published now because of open access That is not, again, that is again something very common that, again, institutions that are committed to research are going to have to start chipping in and paying for, but it used to be a indication of predatory. So just wanted to add that, and again, show my age a little bit.
No, thank you. That's a very valid point. And it's probably best for y'all to talk with your administrators, like your dean, or at least your department chair, and ask about that. How does your university see that issue? And if they don't know, well, then buzz over to somebody in research, or, you know, whatever's at the university to find
The
out.
libraries are often great resources too, to look at what's predatory and what's not.
There you go. Fantastic. Thank you. And the last one I'll mention is, what's your career impact? Well, here's the interesting part. If someone would have told me that at somewhere in my career I'd have been a dean, I'd have said, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. And but it happened. So I didn't plan for that. Although I did plan, I wanted to be a full professor. So that's the typical assistant, associate, full. Or if you come in before that, it's instructor or clinical or whatever. But plan that out for yourself. Like now, that's not impossible to do. And when you do that, you may find that you will not be at the same institution that you are this very moment. Okay, and Kluka's been around. Kluka has been around, and Michael, I think you have too, have you not? You know, and so we take opportunities. It's a little risky, but in your generation, that's not risky at all anymore. But those high impact journals, if you can get one or two or something, then it's going to make a significant achievement, and it could positively impact your career, because the next job may be kind of a hybrid where you have to produce something, and then you have to put something in a general, and then you have to put something in a high impact journal. And at least you've had the experience, and you've run the gauntlet for both. I'm sorry, my baby here is busy barking. So publishing in general journals is still valuable, however, for researchers, particularly those who are early in their career, as long, and this is Kluka again, as long as you're not at an institution that is going to demand high impact. All right, so if they demand high impact, already the bar is up high enough for you to start jumping. Those who work in specialized fields, example, esports. Right now, I'm watching Gentili get her feet on the ground and go in on all of this stuff. And so she was afforded earlier on the opportunity to not have to be concerned with where she was publishing, just that she was publishing, to get the information out there and build the brand, if you will. And now, as she progresses, it'll get a little bit tougher, because there are more people in that area. So if you decide to take something that's a little bit small, just understand that then when that becomes big, that it'll be a lot more competitive. And you want to ask yourself, as you go through your existence, is that something that I still enjoy? Okay, I'm done on that one. So if you have questions or comments, holler. If not, we'll wait sort of to the end.
Okay. Well, we're all going to talk now, or you certainly can, each of you can address your reflection points as you wish. So if Darlene, if you want to keep going, you can. These are some things that obviously have been discussed, but like but in more detail. Let's talk about that first bullet point there about who is the first author and what order are the names in.
Yeah, you know, this is a challenge. This has always has always bothered me. How do you decide who's going to be a co-author. And Michael got lucky. He got in touch with the Beatles, you know, so, okay, it's fantastic. But those of those of us who are not lucky enough to be Beatles, we may not get that opportunity. So the first thing is find somebody who you can professionally respect. All right. And that means many things to many people. You need to see what you value at this moment in your career, because for somebody, and I've had these conversations just this last week with several people, if you believe that your values will not alter a little bit throughout your career, I think I would urge you to consider that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your position. It's okay to see things in a different vernacular. But some people believe that if it's a value that you're going to stick with it for the rest of your life, and maybe in some respects for personal life it is, but for professional purposes, sometimes it's good to be a little fluid so that you stay a little bit more open. So you want to discuss the authorship early with the people that you're going to do the work with, so that you clarify people's expectations. Nothing is worse than going halfway through whatever it is and somebody says, hey, you know what, I need my name on there first because I'm going up for tenure, etc. And the expectation all along was that person's going to be fourth. Remember also that there are universities that only allow you to be a first or a second author, and only so many times. So you want to look at that as well. They also look to see, again, the higher the stakes, if you're at the R1s, etc., and the good R1s, because there's a R1 and then there's an R1, and so that that notion of an R1 could be that you have to have individual publications, as well as being no less or no more than the second author on publications. I used to have in a previous life, was at an R1, and we had to do 6 articles per year, 2 international, 2 national, and then the other 2 we could select. People almost went crazy. There were 12 of us who resigned from the same college at the same time. It was nearly impossible to do, but we're better because of it. Okay.
Can I add something?
Also,
can I add something to that, Darlene?
Please.
I don't know if I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to say, in addition to that decision point of what order the names are gonna be in, also, if you are not the first author, be prepared to talk about to your chair, to your whoever your evaluator, if you're putting together a promotion and tenure dossier, what your contribution was. So if you weren't first author, still talk about what your were you the methodologist? Were you, did you conduct the review of literature? What piece of it did you get? Because everybody's pretty savvy to the 4th, 5th author that they just kind of stuck their name on. Is the article robust enough to have been done by 5 people? Right? I mean, you read some articles and there's 6 people on it. You're like, well, what did 6 people do? It's 3 pages, right? So, be prepared to talk about what your contribution was. So just wanted to add that in there, Darlene.
Yeah, thanks. It's also, and this is my personal professional bias, those who are your theses or dissertation advisors or supervisors, however you want to call them, when they demand that they go on first on every single article, this child has a problem with that, particularly if the person had relatively nothing to do with it, but they're going to get now the full brunt of the credit, because as the stuff rolls out, that's what they look for. So while you're getting a degree, getting that terminal degree, just genuflect, you know. But once you get out there, try not to make the same kinds of mistakes that were made with you. That's the only way that we're going to get better. And if we set the bar higher, that will help.
I would
The
add-
order
I
of
would
the
add that-
authors.
I
What's
would
Rita?
add to that too, just real quick. Be careful about always collaborating with your dissertation advisor. There's a little bit of a stigma around
Hey,
riding
hey.
on the shirt tails of ex-advisor. So I'm not saying it's not good to do that, but at a point you do have to make that separation and show you can do this either on your own or with other collaborators.
Yeah, so the order of the authors could have to do with the level of contribution. When I was back in the previous century with one of the degrees, I said that if you came up with the idea and you did most of the thinking work, you got to be first author. I'm really sorry about this, folks. I just can't get to her. At any rate, so the level of contribution, expertise, seniority, you know, if you can't decide any other way, or maybe the disciplinary norms. Hush, hush. At any rate, I'm watching Michael. Is it Fraina or Fraina? I'm sorry. I know you're going, good God, what is it? Heather, you're going to shoot me. Last time
no.
you'll ask me to do anything.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Rhoda.
At any rate, the part that's important is also an authorship agreement. And I hate to be this sticky. Hush. I hate to be this sticky, but sometimes this happens. Just even if it's on a napkin, you know, so to speak, write down who's going to be doing what so that everybody is in agreement with what's been decided so that you don't have any misunderstandings or disputes later on. And in terms of revision and finalization, make sure that before finalizing that manuscript, that every single author has a chance to go through it. You know, sometimes what happens if they're not number one or number two, they say, oh yeah, just go ahead, send it in. And then all of a sudden something comes back and then they're all over you because they, you know, well, why didn't you catch this? Well, maybe it's because you didn't look at it, you know. So those are some things for you to seriously think about in terms of that. How are you going to decide who you're going to co-author with? And do not, this is Kluka's opinion, do not go on the basis of someone you don't know recommending somebody for you to do research with, all right? Because they may not have the same heart interests that you have. And so you want to be sure that you're lining up so that you're not only intellectually happy, but you're also heart happy with who you're doing work with. Thank you.
Thanks, Darlene. It just made me think of maybe we need like a Tinder app for research collaboration. Okay, maybe not, but we will not call it Tinder, of course, something less racy.
You don't have
would you
to be ugly about this whole thing, you know? I mean, you don't have to be vicious.
Yeah.
Those of us who are my age and maybe the other two ages, I'm not sure, yeah, they would rip us up. They would just rip us up. What for? That's not learning and contributing to the profession. So you can be tough, but you don't have to be nasty.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this organization is much more about collaboration, which is why we're all together sharing. So Michael, would you like to talk about your point here of reflection?
Sure, I got these couple here. And just so you know, Darlene, just for fun, in my first ever article that was published, I was able to get information from Julian Lennon, John Lennon's first son. It was about independent musicians on the web, and I just reached out to him because he dropped an album that I liked, and he and his management team gave me some info. So yeah, there is a real Beatles connection to the madness of my career. Should I review for journals to learn how to publish in journals? This is a leading question. Yes. Because somebody asked about reviewer, what do you look for and how to deal with what reviewers look for? The best way to do it is to be one. So I went back to my CV and I did a little look-see at what I had done. And I published 27 journal articles but I've acted as a reviewer in 32. And so anytime somebody asked me if it was feasible, and it usually was, I just did it because it gave me insight into how to read with a reader's view of my own work then. So I encourage you to go and to do that, because it allows you to have that feedback and insight, work with editors, see how things get done. Plus you get to see other reviewers' feedback, and it isn't about you, which is kind of nice, for then you could read how other people view things and it isn't about you. So definitely that is one thing that if you want to know how reviewers look at manuscripts, go be a reviewer. And they do often take volunteers and things like that. So you can write to an editor and say, hey, this is my area. How do I get involved in this, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. We do have
the
just a few minutes left, so just be more rapid in your responses, please.
Yep. The second point here that I have is that you need to put in some writing structure because of the busyness of your days. I had 3 days a week that I had planned a minimum of 2 hours of writing, because I usually had about 4 projects at hand at any given moment, and I needed those 2-hour blocks at minimum. And so whatever your working system is, do it, but do it consistently, because like I wrote, consistency is the only thing that's really going to help.
Thank you. I'd just like to open it up. That last bullet I created, and it has really been answered by Jen. But also it talks about, we're not talking about a one-way step process where or separate processes where you're submitting abstracts and making presentations at conferences, and then you have your research plan in this bucket, and the 2 buckets don't mix. Obviously we're asking you to mix the buckets and to consider being able to kill many birds with one stone. So are there any questions or any final comments that any of the panelists want to make? I'm on the chat. I am. Michael just put his contact information in there, so.
My advice is start writing, no matter if it takes you an hour to write a paragraph, which I've done. Don't let anything go. Don't let moss grow on you. Write, 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 and it only gets better as you go. It never gets easy, but it gets better. And that's how things end up staying on task.
And you have to plan it, put it on your calendar, and don't let anything get in the way. That's the first thing to go. No, this is dedicated time to write, and don't move it.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? It sounds like each of these panelists are offering you their email addresses so you can get in touch with them. So do that and go to conferences, because that is where you will meet your other band members. That's what I learned today. But really, that is all of these things do exist together to mix everybody up and to get everybody thinking and cross-pollinating ideas. So it doesn't have to be the COSMA conference, there are many others. And so I hope you take advantage of that and can do that.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Yep. Thank you for organizing this too, Heather.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.